everyone to the League of Cinephiles. I'm your host, Alex Helmer.
And I'm Hunter Friesen.
Guys, welcome to another episode of Cinema Wars. Today's topic being, what is the best movie in the X-Men franchise? Hunter, you're a big fan of the franchise. At least I hope. You're co-judging with me tonight.
I want to really see how far these guys reach to find an answer and how well they defend it, because there are a lot of actually different answers you could give on this one.
Yeah, 100%. And we have three competitors who I'm sure are going to argue their hearts out, one of which being the current Cinema Wars champion, the stalker Jaron Herron, who's defending his title for the first time since taking it off the chef Nikita. We have Jacob the Package Cunningham, a two-time former champion, one of the best in the game, and Tristan French, a former Cinema Wars champion himself. So three champions in their own rights. So exciting match here. Let's get to the first of them. He won a match earlier in the season against Agnolo, a three-time champion. It's Tristan French.
How's it going, guys?
He is a two-time champion, free-for-all winner, Jacob the Package Cunningham.
Hello, how are we doing, gentlemen? Excuse me for doing some last-minute research, because until about 30 seconds ago, I thought Tristan was a judge and not a third competitor. I thought this was a 1v1, so I'm looking for some more movies. Great to see you, Tristan. Always love battling you in this division. In terms of the other guy we've got here, this is an interesting one because, you know, this guy's been the talk of the town all season in Cinema Wars, whereas I feel like I've just been shoved aside. You know how many Battle Royale rounds I've played? I've played like 35, 40. I've lost one. Yet I still lost that belt and haven't had another shot at it in like over a year. But, Jaron's the best player this year. So I'm interested to see how this goes.
And the current Cinema Wars champion of the world. He's undefeated. He is the stalker, Jaron Herron.
Oh, man. Alex the host, Helmer, thank you so much for being here. Jacob, you're a funny guy. So let me just... I said I wanted to be a fighting champion, Alex the host, Helmer, and that's why I'm here to this league. I promised you that, and I'm going to be here. Plus, I've seen the analytics, I've seen the comments, I've seen the likes. The people love the Stalker. The Stalker is box office. I'm very excited to be here. I've been watching these X-Men films, Alex, for about 20 years. They're the adult MCU films. They're my favorites. I introduced them to Jacob. I know Tristan's 7 years old, so he hasn't had a chance to actually probably seen them all. So I'm excited today to leave more bodies in my path. Tristan, the Stalker's been watching you. Standing at a whopping 5'0" and 80 pounds. I've seen you for hours and hours fumble your way to the League of Cinephile, kind of as a joke. I saw you put a hat on a hat by investing yourself into a half-assed co-host career, and doing the same old tired. Yeah, this is an interesting play here, Alex. Everyone's tired of you. I know you're tired of yourself, and so I think you're excited for me to put you down today. And Jacob, yeah, we've been friends for a long time, 10, 15 years, and that decade of kinship really means nothing. I've been taking notes on you, Jacob, for over 10 years. I've been inside your house more than your siblings. I've been inside of you more than any lover has. I've seen the transition from promising rookie to biggest bitch in the League of Cinephiles, if I can be honest. Winning faux championships and then claiming you're the best and then losing them and immediately complaining to whoever will hear it, including today. It's been years, man, that it wasn't fair. Your imposter syndrome of, knowing you're not good enough and needing to compensate with belts and funny little quips. I'm going to exploit that today. And Jacob, you cry foul about your last title run, but the truth is you had it easy because you never had to face me.
Well, there will be 3 rounds. We have the opening statement, the rebuttals, and the closing statement. There will be a cinema-related prompt, obviously, in terms of X-Men, today's episode, which competitors must find an answer for. A wheel will be spun to determine who will pick their answer first. Competitors will argue on behalf of their answer and will debate against the other ones. Judges will grade each competitor out of 5 points for the opening and closing rounds and 10 points for a rebuttal round for a maximum potential of 20 points. The competitor with the most points at the end of the match will be declared the winner.
Again, I did not have the spin again slice. It just happened to be there again. Answers can't be picked twice. Only so many
Curious to
X-Men
see what
movies.
spin again picks.
We have... All right, Jacob, you will get your wish as spin again. Jacob is going first.
All right, so there are 2 ways you can really look at this question, but I'm actually going to go with X-Men Days of Future Past, which is a film I rewatched right before this when you sprung this topic on us, and I really think that no film is a better articulation than everything that makes the X-Men stories so special. We've had so many great Wolverine movies, and he is the anchor really of all the X-Men movies, but I think this is one of the few that doesn't shortchange the other characters at the same time. Everybody gets their moment to shine here. Magneto, Michael Fassbender, does some of his best work as the character in this one, especially the monologue he gives on the plane or that speech at the ending. This is the most interesting that James McAvoy's Professor Xavier has been, and it's a coalescence of bringing the old and new characters together. Before, it was about fan service. This is just here to serve the story. It doesn't make a big deal about it. There are no pauses for cameos, and it plays with time travel in such a fun way. Before, we were beholden to like franchise timeline continuity and multiverses and stuff. It's just a fun concept executed brilliantly. It has its silly elements, it has its serious elements, and it is the perfect blockbuster. It's a pure comic book movie in every single sense of the word that does justice to its characters and the X-Men as a team and all of their little interconnected rivalries and character relationships and all of their regrets and hopes and all of the political and government themes as well. The framework of a 70s political thriller is such a brilliant idea to frame the persecution of the X-Men because there was so much Cold War paranoia at the time.
Flip of the coin, basically. We have Karen.
This was an incredibly easy choice for me, and I can't believe I landed over Jacob. I'm obviously taking Logan. Logan is the film that brought prestige to the X-Men films. Logan is the bow on the end of an era of X-Men films. We had like 10 years of X-Men films, including Days of Future Past, that were so confused, that were going back and forth. Which characters do we want to promote? Which characters do we not? And then we finally have Logan, much like the best comics in the X-Men range, which focuses on a specific few characters in the X-Men, mostly Professor X and Logan, and tells one beautiful story about them. It tells the story of the future of the X-Men, the future of the mutants coming up. It gives us hope, considering all we've had before and everything that was terrible. It gives us hope that the next lot of the future will actually be great. It is the most emotionally poignant. It is the only film that ever got an Oscar nomination and probably ever will from the X-Men films. It has the best critic scores of any X-Men films. It made an insane amount of money given an R rating. The people love it. The critics love it. It finally brought prestige to this franchise. And Logan is immediately what everyone goes to, including Jacob, who drafted on our draft number 1 for best X-Men films around.
All right, that's going to do it. Tristan, 1 minute on the clock.
All right, I can't believe I actually landed on this. When we talk about this question, what is the best X-Men movie? I'm looking at what is the film that best represents this franchise and what it means to so many people, and that is X2, for sure, in my opinion. I think this original cast is really what people love about when it comes to the X-Men. They portrayed these characters perfectly. And while Logan is a great movie and Days of Future Past, I really like how they bring in the new cast and the old cast. I think X-Men is the most important film in this franchise because it took, something that everyone loves, like the X-Men comics, and put it on screen in a way that really excited people. It elevated the superhero genre, and it meant a lot of things to a lot of people because of its messages of inclusivity and how these X-Men, these characters were outcasts, and the way it deals with that, it has a lot of depth, and I think it's a film that perfectly merges the goofy comic book type thing that it's going for with some deeper messages, and it's the film that I think best represents this franchise.
That's going to do it, guys. So now scores will be calculated for the opening round. All right, so scores have been calculated from the first round real quickly. Jaren's argument I thought was the most well-rounded in terms of the use of different metrics, in terms of just the entire depth of what he decided to delve into outside of the contents of the film itself. What about Jacob for you, Hunter?
I like that he had talked about the entire cast of characters. I'm talking young and old in terms of the eras of X-Men, but he really focused on the actors more than just the characters.
Yeah, and then Tristan went last, obviously, but he said he, X-Men 2 was his pick nonetheless. Thought he had the most emotionally resonant argument of the three, channeling his argument into the meaning and the importance of the X-Men movies. That definitely set him apart for me, but at the end of the day, both of our scores were calculated, and right now at the end of round 1, this is the result. Jaren up at the top, 8.6. Jacob at 8.2, and then Tristan at 7.8. So 0.4 separating first from second, second from third. But guys, the second round, the rebuttal round, is worth 10 points each. So, let's get going.
Logan is a spectacular movie, but I think what made that so great is how intimate it is and how much it focuses just on developing the character of Wolverine, Logan, as well as Professor X. I feel like this question is asking what is the best X-Men movie, and I don't think Logan is. And that's one of the things that makes it so great, because it is so narrow focused and because it is a film that is more intimate. But when we're talking about, what encapsulates what makes X-Men so special, I don't think Logan really contains any of that. And then when it comes to Days of Future Past, it's a really awesome movie, but I think with that, there are so many characters in it that it becomes a little convoluted. And when, for example, like when you see a lot of fans and a lot of these, future Marvel movies, when they're referencing these characters, they always want to bring back the original cast. And it's because that cast of characters in X2 just had really special chemistry, was able to take these beloved comic book characters and portray them on screen in such a perfect way that I just don't think can be topped. And I don't think any of the remake characters were able to do that in Days of Future Past.
All right, immediately I'm going to put to bed this notion that Logan doesn't count in an X-Men film, because I knew this was going to come up, because it is about the central characters, one specific X-Men. But what makes an X-Men film great isn't a bunch of people wearing the same uniform. What makes an X-Men movie great is diving into what makes a human being or a mutant an actual X-Men. What makes them a superhero. This is the deepest psychology on Wolverine. This brings back Charles Xavier, the X literally in X-Men. This movie talks about what he did wrong originally, how it all went haywire, and how they can rebuild the future to create the X-Men again, or just to give everyone life. It is, again, the most emotionally poignant. The X-Men comic books are violent, they're grim, they're explicit. They're set in like these desolate, a lot of them are set in these like desolate worlds, the best ones. And that's all that Logan was finally allowed to be. First of all, on Days of Future Past, that film is impenetrable. Like, you cannot watch that if you haven't seen the hundreds of films that came before. It leans on those films so much, but it also doesn't lean on them honestly. You'd be lost even if you did seen it, because all of a sudden Wolverine has his claws again, and Professor Xavier is alive even after the last ones, like, he was dead and Wolverine was back to bone claws. You were talking about 60s and 70s vilification and how that's really good. It just lent on the First Class model of doing that. And Deadpool, the Deadpool film in the X-Men franchise even makes a joke, oh, yay, dated metaphor for racism in the 60s and 70s. That's what Days of Future Past does. It builds on that model. This stuff with the Sentinels is so poorly CG that you don't even really see them as a threat. They look kind of horrific at the beginning. There's like these world-ending stakes. Oh my God, how much times are the fucking mutants going to be wiped out? Every single one of these films, the mutants are probably going to die. There's going to be a war, mutants versus humans. It's old, it's stale. Logan finally did something new, and that's what makes it emotional. That's what makes it poignant. And quickly on X2, I mean, that wasn't even really going to ever come up for me on Best X-Men Film, because I mean, it just doesn't hold a candle to any of them, really. I mean, the plot, can you tell me what exactly the plot is? So Nightcrawler is brainwashed for an assassination attempt. Logan is still searching for his past. He's on the same tour that he was in X1. Jean is trying to learn her powers. Stryker is the main villain, and he has a son with Professor X powers who's a paraplegic. The X-Men get kidnapped. Magneto builds a bigger Cerebro. There's like a 40-minute fight in a gray basement. Like, that film it's got characters like, what did Jean Grey do in that film? What did Cyclops do in that film? Rogue and Pyro, these great characters from the first X-Men. What did they do? They came up and did nothing. This movie was when X-Men tended to lean on its worst elements, and that's what it is. But Logan doesn't do any of that. It's its own thing, and that's why it's clearly the best X-Men film and best film. Also, thank you for calling it great like 5 times. I appreciate that.
I mean, you're right that Logan doesn't do any of that, because you asked like what all these characters do. Well, in Logan, what these characters do is nothing, because they're not in it. Because again, I'm not saying Logan's not an X-Men movie. It is. I'm saying it's not the best X-Men movie. It's one of my favorite superhero movies ever made, but it's a character piece. It's a movie about it's a Western reskin about a lost gunslinger trying to find one last bit of redemption. In the fact, what I would say about it is that the X-Men elements, the blockbustery elements and the comic booky elements are the weakest elements of Logan. What I would think about when I think about Logan is the internal character conflict, a human being trying to save another human being. The villain, no one remembers the villain in that movie. No one remembers the mutant powers and the action scenes. It's the core character drama between Logan and Laura is what sticks out to me between that movie. And you talk about prestige, talk about making money. I don't think that has anything to do with it, because at the end of the day, these are comic book movies. These are superhero movies. And I think X2, and to an even greater extent, Days of Future Past, does that even better. I think Trask is such a great villain because he's not a physical threat, he's a political one. And again, you say, oh, a data metaphor for racism. Like, that's what Logan does too. Logan's a movie about immigration, someone trying to get kids across a border, you know? That's what all these movies are about, and they're probably some of the most political comic book stories ever. So it would make sense that Days of Future Past goes into that. And I don't think it's that convoluted or confusing. They got confusing and convoluted afterwards, but Days of Future Past represents an absolute bright spot in 2010's blockbuster and comic book filmmaking. And the new cast running out, I think Magneto surpasses, Fassbender's Magneto surpasses what Ian McKellen does in those films.
No way.
All right, okay.
This is a man desperately reaching. First of all, you just said that, like, you're contradicting yourself. You just said mine is an old Western gunslinger reskin. You just said, oh, look, Days of Future Past is such a great political thriller. Wouldn't that just make it a political thriller reskin? X-Men Logan is so intricate with its politics that the villains also augment themselves. It's not cut and dry. These are good, these are bad, like all these other X-Men movies. And you said the X-Men point is the weakest in Logan. Everyone remembers this human story. No, everyone remembers the grave being turned into an X because it represents the X-Men, because Wolverine gave these kids a chance to grow up and become something greater, become that team again. It's paying respect to the entire franchise. Oh, the characters from the other movies aren't in it. That doesn't matter. You can grab any comic, you can grab any movie and be like, oh, Rogue isn't this one. Oh, Mystique isn't this one. Oh, Professor X isn't in this one. That doesn't matter. People jump around all the time. It's about the stories of the people that represent the X-Men. Hugh Jackman's Logan is the X-Man, and his movie is so focused, and it goes into those details. They talk about how we were at the, we were doing this battle together. We lost everyone. I lost her. Like, they go into this, and they go into the morality of it, the morality of even having the team, what happened to the team, what happened to Professor X. Like, this, it's such an intricate story, and it doesn't step on its own toes. Like I said, Days of Future Past is the film that fucking, like, broke the timeline. Nothing even makes sense after it. Nothing makes sense at the beginning of it. Like I said, it's fucking impenetrable.
Let's go to Tristan, Jacob, and then we're gonna end it.
It's interesting that we're having this conversation now, right after this new Deadpool came out, because I think it kind of deems Logan irrelevant within the grand scheme of the X-Men movies, because, you know, Logan is back now, and I feel like a huge reason why that film was so impactful was, you talked about that grave scene. They pretty much just backtracked and you know, made that entirely irrelevant. So I think when we talk about what's the best X-Men film, it's absolutely not Logan, because it really doesn't even have anything to do with these X-Men movies anymore. It's completely been discarded, and Marvel is moving on and bringing Hugh Jackman back.
Thank you. Yeah. Jaren, thanks for interrupting me. I wasn't done. But yeah, what I was saying is Days of Future Past, it's a comic book movie. It's an X-Men movie. It's a team-up movie. The way they bring these characters in, it is just the best coalescence. It's like X-Men 2 on steroids, because I didn't get to talk about X-Men 2. X-Men 2 is like really fun and has a lot of great action set pieces in the way they like set up everyone's powers. And I think that's what Days of Future Past sort of does better, with even more characters, with more emotional plot lines. Mystique's whole arc, and this is the most compelling she's been in any of the films. The back and forth cutting of the climax between old and new, the scenes of the Sentinels taking down the new X-Men while Magneto is talking about their oppression. It's so much fun. It's so compelling. It's so emotional. And Logan's like a great eulogy to a character, whereas Days of Future Past really blends and weaves in the entire ethos of the X-Men universe in a way that was never really replicated in a comic book film, let alone an X-Men film.
All right, that's going to do it. Now Hunter and I will calculate scores. Scores have been calculated from the rebuttal round. Hunter, your brief thoughts on Tristan French's round.
Well, I think he did a great job of trying to iterate why, you know, because Jacob's talking about X-Men Days of Future Past is old and young, but Tristan was trying to focus more on the old characters, the original ones that really made the franchise. His point was on that. And I think he did touch on the Deadpool factor of between Logan, the movie Logan, and now that he's back in Hugh Jackman's form in Deadpool Wolverine. So I appreciate reaching back into the past and into the future. There you go.
Yeah, and then Jaren's point, like he went to this his poignant point about the psychology of the X-Men, as far as to go toward to the symbolism in Logan that represents that, including the X at the grave in Logan, talking about X2, the plot holes, just the variety of problems in that film, and then the reskin point. in terms of the political thriller Western mini debate that we had during that round, which I thought was the most effective tool that he used throughout the entire round.
And he did get into Bolivar Trask as a opponent for the X-Men, where it's never the physicality of the villain that really sells it. It's what they represent to the characters and the heroes.
For sure. All right, but these are the scores heading into the final round. We have Jaron still in the lead, expands his lead to 26.9. Jacob at second place, 25.5, and Tristan at the bottom at 24.9. Jaron extends. We still have one more round, though. Tristan, you're on the clock. 1 minute for your closing argument.
All right, so I feel like I've really talked about Logan and Days of Future Past, but I haven't really argued why I think that X2 is such an incredible film. And one of the reasons is because I think that more so than any of these films, it was a significant leap in the superhero genre. I think before X2 came out, and as well as Spider-Man and the first X-Men, but specifically X2, superhero movies were not taken seriously at all. They were very goofy, and I feel like X2 brought a groundedness to it while still exemplifying what people loved about superheroes. And it turned something that was originally considered nerdy into something that was very popular, and really ended up boosting the superhero genre to what we know it is today. I think that it's a great film and a great just example of all of these actors at the peak of their powers. They have great chemistry with each other. I think Magneto is absolutely incredible in this movie. I love Ian McKellen's performance. I think he just brings a depth and a gravitas to it, and it's just, yeah.
Okay, well, Logan kind of represents the death of the comic book movie. X2 kind of represents the comic book movie finding its feet. And I think that Days of Future Past represents the comic book movie at the height of its powers, representing everything that it can be. Just on the reskin point, I think that Logan still works as a movie Logan works as a Western without its superhero elements, whereas Days of Future Past, it's not a political thriller. It uses those elements to supplement the themes, but there is so much going on in that film in terms of mutants and superpowers and everything that it would not work without that. It is a comic book movie first and a political thriller second, and it just has some of the most fun and memorable set pieces of any X-Men movie that really show off the full extent of what mutants can do, which is what make the X-Men such a great and unique team. You've got the Quicksilver scene is probably one of the most entertaining things that's ever happened in a comic book movie. Magneto lifts up a fucking baseball field. It's full of some of the coolest shit you have seen in a movie. I adore Logan. I love Logan, but it sort of sits under the same asterisk as the Deadpool movies do for me, where it kind of doesn't count.
Thank you. I love this because Jacob said it just kind of doesn't count, whereas 10 minutes ago he says it does count. These guys are tripping up on themselves to try and contradict Logan, to try and refute Logan, but they can't do it. First of all, Days of Future Past does a disservice to both of its teams. You said it's a movie with so much in it. Yes, it is. It lacks focus. At height of its powers, no, it doesn't. Immediately after releasing this, they had to drop the Rogue cut because they lost her in the edit and had to apologize to the fans of Rogue. That is a movie that doesn't have focus at all. X2, you said it embraces itself. No, it's not. It's ashamed of itself. They didn't even give this team costumes. They put them in a basement made of gray nothingness and then no costumes. It's forgettable. I don't remember what that movie even does, even though I've seen it 10 times. You guys keep saying Logan is great and brilliant. Yes, it is. Let's talk about Deadpool and Wolverine because you brought it up. They give a 20-second moment of silence towards Logan. They say that this film, not Days of Future Past, certainly not X2, this film and this character are the key moments of this universe. They themselves said this is the best movie that they have ever made. You're contradicting yourself because of the reskin part. It's the most emotional. It's the most beautiful to look at. It's the only one with an Oscar nomination. It will be remembered for all time as the best.
All right. Final scores will now be calculated. All right, so that's going to do it for the final round of the match. Quick thoughts on each of the competitors. Tristan, I thought this was his weakest of the three, just a bit more generic than the others in terms of just generalizing elements that he liked about the film. Just my opinion personally. Hunter, what about what you thought of Jacob's?
For Jacob, I actually thought it was a very good summarization of his points in the opening and rebuttal round. He talked about Days of Future Past being at the height of the comic book genre around that 2014-15 area, but also how Days of Future Past leverages its heroes to become a comic book movie. This is not a movie that you could put normal people in and make it just a movie. You have to have these characters in with their powers, and it does a great way to show them off. So He highlighted that.
Yep, and then last but not least, Jaren, the individual in the lead right now, thought he was definitely on the same wavelength as his previous two arguments, both trying to take down Days of Future Past, my bad, and X2, talking about the lack of focus in Days of Future Past, the road cut, and then X2 in regards to how it doesn't embrace itself as a comic book movie in regards to its comic book roots. So those are our thoughts on the three competitors. At the end of the day, we have a cumulative winner, and that man is, and your winner, and still the CINEMAWARS champion of the world, the Stalker, Jaren Heron. A final score of 36 to 33.9 to 32.3. Jaren, you won pretty handily in a match in which all three of these competitors, all of you guys love the X-Men franchise. What do you do differently than your competitors to get the W today?
The funny thing is that wasn't even my original choice. I came in looking for something else. It got taken, and I pivoted to Logan. But Logan is probably my favorite superhero. Was solely based on knowledge and passion, and I think that's what gets you through this. And look, these two guys were great. Tristan was really fun. Jacob especially tried all the tricks in the bag. Some of them nearly got to me, but I think I was able to rebut most things that were brought up. It was tough fighting for Logan because I did agree with some things they were saying, but I had to try my hardest to refute it. Again, that was based on passion because I love the film. These two kids took a shot. None of them missed. I leave two more bodies in my wake, and we'll see who's next in line.
You're the CINEMAWARS champion of the world. You defeated Jacob, the individual who's perhaps your biggest rival and biggest threat. Are you the best player to ever play this game?
I think that's pretty obvious. I think you know it. I think everyone watching knows it. I think Jacob knows it. And I think with one half of my brain tied behind my back, I could pretty handily beat most people that come up against me. Thank you.
Jaren did what I usually do, and it worked for him. If I picked Logan, maybe I would have won. Who knows what happens? But again, I also don't think I played my best game today. I think I fought admirably on a topic that I didn't really want, but I also know this was far from my best. There were definitely sections where I was like, fuck, I got nothing. And again, Jaren comes at you with so much heat that if you pause for even a second, he's not really going to let you snap out of it. So yeah, that was a tough match.
It's pretty obvious right now that Jaren and Jacob are the two best in the game at the moment. And to be able to play with them and I don't think I did too badly. I hung in there. So I'm happy with my performance, and I definitely would love a shot to play these guys again.
Jaren declared himself as the best CINEMAWARS player of all time. Obviously, he's only played 3 matches, but he has declared that. What do you have to say? Yes or no? Are you the best CINEMAWARS player of all time?
I'm not going to say I'm the best of all time, and I'm not going to outright say Jaren's the best of all time because I've got a lot more tape than him of me absolutely dominating everyone else in this league. But again, like I said, we basically grew up together, so he knows which buttons to push to get under my skin. So yeah, he could be. I could be. I wouldn't mind another crack in the future. But yeah, that was definitely the hardest fucking CINEMAWARS match I've ever played. And I've played 3-hour-long battle royales. So he's pretty good at this shit.
Yeah, no, it's been storming here all day, actually, and it's still brewing outside my window. And I thought that was Mother Nature setting me up for a battle of the Titans. It kind of played out like that a little bit, but not really. It was our expected winner taking it from a wire-to-wire win. So in terms of some of the surprises, we're actually in terms of the right away in the picks. Jacob going with kind of the surprise pick in Days of Future Past, and then Jaren going with Logan. So it kind of did put him in a disadvantage when you go up against a film that you absolutely love, just as Tristan just said there in the post-game interview.
That's going to do it, guys, for this episode of CINEMAWARS. Jaren comes out on top, 36 points in the lead. He's the winner. He defends his belt for the first time. Come back to see more CINEMAWARS action very soon, more movie trivia. We'll be seeing you all soon. Thank you so much for tuning in. Ciao.